Hello, welcome back to Mr. Kendrick's online math class. This is going to be lesson 5.4, Solving Proportions. Go ahead and turn to the next blank page in your math notebook and put this lesson title at the top. In our last lesson, we were learning about writing proportions, pulling information out of tables or word problems to write proportions. And this lesson is going to be focused on strategies we can use to solve for an unknown in a proportion. Alright, strategy 1. First strategy we can use is mental math. We're going to use basic multiplication or division. Okay, go ahead and pause here. Make sure you write this information down in your math notebook and then push play to follow along with these three examples here. Alright, in the first example we have 4 to 7 equals 44 to m. And so we're looking to find out what m, the value of m. And the way we're going to do that is we're going to ask ourselves, if I have 4 and I increase to 44, what would I need to multiply 4 by to get to 44? And 4 times 11 will equal 44. So now we need to do that to the 7 times 11. So 7 times 11 equals 77. So m is equal to 77. Alright, now number 2, we're going to be going from a bigger number to a smaller number. So we're going to be using the opposite of multiplication. We're going to be using division. Okay, so if we have 48 and 6. Okay, so we're going to ask ourselves, what would I need to divide 48 by to get to 6? And 48 divided by 8 will give you 6. So we need to divide 72 by 8, and that'll give us the value for D, and D is equal to 9. 72 divided by 8 equals 9. Alright, and then the third example, we have the bigger number on the left side with the unknown, and the smaller numbers on the right. So our full ratio, we're going to ask ourselves, what would we need to do to get from 3 to 21? And we would get there by multiplying by 7. So 3 times 7 is 21. So now we need to multiply 8 times 7. 8 times 7 is 56. Okay, so x equals 56. Okay, so there's the strategy of using mental math to find multiplication or division to find the unknown variable. Make sure you have these examples written down before you move on. Alright, next strategy, number 2. We can use cross products to find the unknown variable. So when we use cross products, the first thing we're going to do is cross multiply, and then that's going to create a new equation, and then we're going to divide to isolate the variable. Okay, so make sure you pause, get this information written down, and then come back and work through these examples alongside me. Alright, so when we cross multiply, we are multiplying across diagonally. So for this first one, we can multiply 21 times x, and that will give us 21x, and then equals 14 times 9, and if we use a calculator, 14 times 9 equals 126. So now we have a one-step equation. Now to isolate the variable, we're going to divide because we have multiplication. So we're going to divide 21 and then divide 126 by 21. And these will cancel out, and you'll be left with x equals 126 divided by 21, and we get 6. X equals 6. Okay, you can either pause here and try B on your own, or you can watch for another example as I go through this one. Cross multiplying, we're going to start with the variable, so I'm going to multiply 54 times D, and I'll get 54D equals 9 times 27. 9 times 27, and that is equal to 243. Okay, now to isolate the variable, I need to divide by 54. And divide by 54. These will cancel, and we'll be left with D equals 243 divided by 54, and we get D is equal to 4.5. Alright, last example here, we got 55 to 4 equals H to 6. So we'll start by multiplying against the variable. 4 times H will give us 4H equals, and then 55 times 6, 55 times 6 is equal to 330. Now to isolate the variable, divide by 4. We get cancellation here. We get H equals 330 divided by 4, and that is 82.5. Okay, so the strategy number 2, using cross products. First we multiply across the ratios, and then we get a new equation, and we divide to isolate the variable at that point. Okay, make sure you have these 3 examples written down in your notes before you move on. Alright, next we're going to take a look at word problems. Okay, make sure that you write this information down first before continuing on to solve the problem. When we're working with word problems, we want to make sure that we label first, okay, before we set up our proportion. Okay, we want the same units in the numerator and the same units in the denominator. And once you have that set up, and then that will allow you to pull information out of the word problem to set your proportion and then solve. Alright, taking a look here, we have a word problem that says the school was having a food drive. The ratio of soup cans to vegetable cans was 4 to 3. If there were 27 vegetable cans, how many were soup cans? Okay, so first thing, we got some information that we need to pay attention to. First, we're talking about ratios. Okay, we're using ratios, and the first units that they give us are soup cans. Okay, so that's going to be on top, and then we also got vegetable cans, which is going to be in the denominator. Okay, so if we set it up now, we get soup cans, and that's going to be over vegetable cans. So I'm just going to write veg. Okay, and then if we just take the information that they give us and plug it in, our ratio is 4 to 3, so that is 4 soup cans to 3 vegetable cans. So I'm going to set that up as 4 to 3. And then the other information that they give us is there was 27 vegetable cans. Okay, and then we were trying to find out how many soup cans there were. So that's going to be our unknown. So the rest of our proportion will look like 27, and then our unknown, so I'm just going to use x as the variable. Alright, so now we've pulled the information out, we've set up our proportion, and now we can use any strategy that we would like to solve this. I'm going to go ahead and do cross products first, and then we'll go through the mental math at the end. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to multiply across here. So 3 times x will be 3x equals, and then we got 4 times 27, and that's 108. Okay, now we can divide to isolate, so we're going to divide by 3, cancel out, we get x equals 108 divided by 3, and that is 36. So x is equal to 36. Now, if you did mental math and you said, what is 3, or what do I need to multiply 3 by to get to 27? That would be times 9. So 4 times 9 would be 36. Okay, so either way works. Make sure you have this example written down in your notes before you move on. Alright, we got another word problem here. And this one says, an elementary school has 960 students. The ratio of 5th grade students to all students is 2 to 15. How many 5th graders are in the school? Alright, so I'm going to go through and pull out some information. We have, a school has 960 students, so that's the total students. And then the ratio that we were working in is 5th grade students to all students. Okay, so when we set up our proportion, we can say 5th grade and that's going to be over all students. Okay, so this will be the way we set up our proportion, and now we can pull information from the word problem. And we get the ratio is 2 to 15, so 2 represents the 5th graders, so that's going to be on top, and 15 represents the all students, so that's going to be on the bottom. And then we know that there are 960 students total. And we are trying to find out how many of those students are 5th graders, so that's our unknown. Alright, in order to solve this one, I'm going to go ahead and use the cross products, and then we will solve from there. So we get, multiplying across the proportion, 15 times x will give you 15x equals, and then 960 times 2, 960 times 2 will be 1,920, 1,920, and now we can divide to isolate the variables, so divide by 15, divide by 15, cancel out here, we get x equals 1,920 divided by 15, and we get 128. So that tells us that in the school, when there are 960 students, 128 of them are 5th graders. Alright, make sure you have this example written down before you continue on. Alright, and last word problem that we're going to go through here. It says there are 198 people in an audience. The ratio of adults to children is 8 to 3. How many adults are in the audience? Alright, so first we're dealing with the ratio of adults to students. So when we set this up, adults is going to be on top, and students is going to be on the bottom. Alright, so we have our ratio set up, but this problem is a little bit different because it gives us this 198 people, but that's the total amount of people all together, so that's adults and children. So we have to figure out, using the ratio that they give us, how many adults there are of the 198 and how many children. Okay, so our ratio is going to be 8 to 3, 8 adults for every 3 children. And now, if we add these two together, 8 plus 3, that will give us 11. So the ratio that they're starting with, they're just talking about a group of 11. Okay, so now, if we know that for every group of 11 every 11 people, there are going to be 8 adults and 3 children, then we have to figure out how many groups of 11 there are in 198. Okay, so we're going to have to take 198 and we're going to have to divide it by 11. Okay, so if we use our calculator and we get 198 divided by 11, we get 18. So that tells us that in the total number of people, 198, there are going to be 18 groups of 11. Okay, so 18 groups of 11. So that means that we have to multiply the number of adults and the number of children by 18. Okay, so if we multiply by 18, multiply by 18, 18 times 8 is 144, and then 3 times 18 is 54. Okay, so now we know that and if we add these together, 144 plus 54 is, we get 8, 9, so 198. So now we have the total amount of people right here, and we know that there are 144 adults and there are 54 children. So to answer the question, how many adults? There are 144 adults.